Most founders track their revenue, their expenses, their conversion rates. Almost none of them are tracking the one thing that affects every single one of those numbers. Chronic stress is costing you more than your last bad hire, your most expensive software subscription, and probably your last failed launch, all combined. And unlike all of those, it doesn't show up on a single spreadsheet. Hi, I'm Gigi, and I help high achievers use science backed methods to escape chronic overwork, reduce stress, and build sustainable wealth without sacrificing their health. By the end of this video, you are going to have a clear picture of exactly what chronic stress has been costing you in your cognitive capacity, your physical health, and your revenue. This is the same framework I walk through at the start of every Wealth Rewire Intensive, because until you actually see the cost, you can't make the case for changing anything. Before we get into it, the free stress state assessment is linked in the description below. It takes you 5 minutes and tells you exactly which stress state is running your business right now. Here's the thing nobody tells you when you're building a business. Every single decision you make goes through your nervous system first. Every single one. Who to hire, what to price, which opportunity to say yes to, which client to let go. Your nervous system is filtering all of it through one question before your conscious mind even gets involved. And the question isn't, is this strategic? The question is this safe? One of the clients that came to work with me right when I shift from bookkeeping to coaching, we were talking about this new arm of business that she wanted to build. And she had the business plan. She had everything on paper, and the strategy was beautiful. The vision was amazing. The strategy was beautiful. Everything on paper was spot on. She had the strategy. She was building like a strong strategic foundation for this new arm of business. But the thing that caused her to come work with me, one was to make sure that she was starting this new arm of business sustainable and profitable. The second thing is she couldn't understand why she was struggling to take action to bring that vision that was on paper and it was beautiful into reality. And that the answer most of the times is simple. She didn't feel safe. But when we talk about safety, there is the real safety of being in an environment that we are physically safe. We also have emotional safety to make sure that we are in an environment that we are emotionally safe. But there's also this very little nifty gray area that is perceived safety. And perceived safety is not real. And when we are unconscious filtering for that perceived safety, our trauma is going to trigger that sense of not being safe. And with this client in specific was that bigger vision. Growing up, like a lot of us, I know I could relate a lot to what she was going through. We were conditioned to become smaller, to play small, to make her dreams smaller. not to take too much space. And this phase of her business was this new phase of her business required her to take up space, to fill up the room, to really like go big, right? To do all those things that she was conditioned to know, that she was conditioned to perceive as not safe, because she would be yelled at, her mom would say something, her dad, whatever it happened. So what we had to work on was not the strategy of this new arm of her business or her desire to make it happen or the impact that this new dream would have not only on her life, but her clients and her community and all the people around her. It was rewiring what safe means and rewiring that taking up space, that being visible is safe. Changing that background is what allowed her to really launch this new business and launch it very successful. So, as we can see, this situation was not a mindset problem or a So the situation with my client, it was not a strategy problem. It was not that she didn't have the tools that she needed to start this new arm of her business. It wasn't even a mindset problem because she had all that mindset piece kind of in the right spot. The problem was that lack of congruency or alignment between her vision, her mindset, and her nervous system. And when we think about those items, those situations, when we are by ourselves, it's easy to think that we are lacking discipline because I have the vision, I have the plan, I just cannot implement it. We need to understand that there's nothing wrong with you. Actually, your nervous system is operating exactly as designed. Our nervous system is designed to protect us. But in the business context, we need to understand, and we can say, and my client, she didn't have a strategy problem or a mindset problem or lack of discipline. She had her nervous system operating exactly as designed by protecting her in a business context with business-sized consequences. A quick question why we're here, drop in the comments. Do you make your biggest business decisions in the morning when you're fresh or later in the day? When you are in chronic stress, when you have this vision, you have this plan, we have this strategy, but you're just lacking, you feel like you're lacking that motivation to bring it to fruition. Or the moment that you sit behind your computer and you start working on this plan that you have, you start tweaking it, changing it because you think it needs more refinement. Let me know, because this is a pattern that I see with a lot of founders. And we need to understand that this is not a problem with your motivation or your ambition. This is literally us needing to take a deeper view into your nervous system, safety, and how this new plan triggers a part of you that feels unsafe. When you are in chronic stress, cortisol keeps your nervous system in a low-grade activation state. And one of the main things chronic cortisol elevation does is reduce activity in your prefrontal cortex. And that is a part of your brain responsible for strategic thinking, nuanced decision-making, emotional regulation, and creativity, which is also not coincidentally, everything that makes you good at running a business. Researchers call it decision fatigue. But what it means in a chronic stress context is that you're not starting your day at full capacity. You're starting at a reduced baseline and degrading from there. By 4 p.m., on a normal high stress workday, you're making decisions with significantly less cognitive resource than you had at 9 a.m. And most founders don't even realize it because you're still functioning. Functioning is not the same as operating at your highest capacity. And one of the things that I think is very common for me and for my clients is when we are lower capacity, anything that is unexpected triggers. So if I'm finishing my workday and I go check my email and a client sent an email that I was not expecting, immediately my brain goes to the worst case scenario. So she's mad at me, she doesn't like me, something bad happened. That's what my brain does. And then I enter that state of almost like inaction where that email is not going to get out of my head, but I'm not going to open that email because I'm afraid of what I'm going to see. And this is literally my brain operating in less capacity without the cognitive resource to understand that, oh, my client is emailing me because we had a coaching call yesterday and she had something that she wants my review or that she wants to talk over and she just sent in an email instead of a voice memo or whatever, right? So it's easy to go back on thinking that I need to optimize my routine, that I need to do this, that I need to do that. But in reality, all we need to do is understand that we have a lower capacity at this moment and know the tools and resources that we can implement to elevate our baseline. So tomorrow or later today, my capacity is at its peak instead at its lower. Now, I want to talk about the physical cost of stress as well. We've been trained as founders to treat physical symptoms as a separate conversation from our business. You just push through, you optimize, you perform, you hustle. But I need you to stay here with me because your cognitive output runs on your physical resources. They are not separated systems. Chronic elevated cortisol disrupts your sleep architecture. So even if you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, the quality of that sleep is compromised. It suppresses our immune function, elevates systemic inflammation, and disrupts the hormonal systems that regulate your energy and focus. What this looks like on the ground, you're feeling tired, but you can wind down. You're tired and wired. You catch every illness that goes around. Your best thinking happens on vacation, not at your desk. And that's not your personality. That's not you being lazy. That's not you losing your ambition. That is a depleted nervous system. Now let's talk revenue, because here is where I want you to get really honest with yourself. This regulation doesn't just affect how you feel. It shows up in a specific, repeatable business behaviors. And every single one of them has a price tag. can show up as undercharging because raising your prices feels physiologically dangerous rather than strategically uncomfortable. Saying yes to clients when you knew they weren't a right fit because your nervous system cannot tolerate the uncertainty of saying no, or perhaps the uncertainty of saying no to a client and not feeling that spot. Delaying a launch until it's perfect, which is really the freeze response, keeping you safe from judgment, disappointment, and perhaps failure. Making an impulsive investment because the activation in your body needed somewhere to go. Not following up with warm leads because the potential rejection feels too personal and costly to risk. None of those are strategy problems. None of those are confidence problems. They are nervous system responses that happen to occur in a business context with real revenue implications. And when I started my business, the biggest pattern that I saw was the undercharging, right? It was people that were fully booked, but they still felt that they didn't have money. So they were like, I'm just like overworking. I am giving too much. I don't have time for my personal life, but still it feels like I'm not creating that wealth that I really want. And when I sat down and I look at their numbers, they were grossly undercharging. And a lot of my work is that combination of the mechanics, the strategy with the nervous system regulation and the mindset work. And in those cases, the architecture, the mechanics is very simple. A profitable price needs to be built a certain way. You need to consider your operating costs, the cost to deliver whatever it is that you're delivering, the time that you're spending, all those things, your profit margin, whatever. You just add it up, multiply, and then you get to your minimum viable price. I would say 9 out of 10 of those clients in that early stage of my business, once we came up with the minimum viable price, they felt like they were gonna faint because they were like, nobody's gonna pay me this. And then obviously on those situations, like we work on money mindset, we work on the nervous system regulation, but also we work with the concept of maybe we can change our offer, maybe we can trim down, maybe there are things that we can play around that makes a minimum viable price feel safe and feel fair and feel like the correct exchange. And now, in working with other clients throughout the years, we still have that undercharging problem. But another thing that I see a lot is launch delays. And this one is the one that we blame on our perfectionist self, right? Like, I'm perfectionist. Everything needs to be perfect. I want to give my clients the best experience that they can have. Therefore, I'm like needy picking everything. My clients are needy picking everything. They're delaying launches because things just are just not so. And this is the fear of rejection. If you never launch, you're never going to be rejected. You're never going to fail. Things don't have an opportunity to go wrong. So we need to work with making sense that things going wrong is not a reflection of who you are, your capabilities, and it doesn't mean anything other than data points that we can go back to and we can figure it out. What worked, what didn't work, what we can change, what we can repeat, what we can completely remove from the situation. And that's one of the things that I work with my clients. And it's that old saying like done is better than perfect. Sometimes it's hard for us to truly believe that to be true for us. So it is some healing and some learning to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And we need to understand that the pattern here isn't really the problem. The problem is when we let this pattern run without examining it and understanding it so we can start changing. And here's what I really want you to sit with before we wrap up. This isn't one expensive moment. It's not one thing. It is the compounding effect of hundreds of small decisions made from slightly compromised state every day over months and years that quietly shape your revenue ceiling, your health trajectory, and your capacity to actually build what you came here to build. If dysregulation has this kind of leverage on the downside, regulation has the exactly same leverage on the upside. Every decision made from a regulated state has more access to creativity, strategic thinking, genuine risk assessment, and clarity. This is not woo. This is the same neuroscience, just running in the other direction. And this shift can happen as quickly or as slow as it feels safe for you. And the thing here is when we're talking about this combination of strategy with the architecture mechanics of business, with this more holistic and soft skills approach of mindset and the nervous system regulation, we do need to understand that they're all connected. And we also need to understand that old patterns, old lessons, old beliefs, all those things leads to what we perceived as safe or unsafe in this business setting. And to heal that, to start sensing it and bringing those patterns to awareness, and then to start shifting them. It's a very simple process, but it's not easy because it requires you to be radical honest with yourself. Having somebody to guide you through that is non-judgmental is always very helpful. And that's where I step in with my clients. But the other thing that I want you to know is that you don't need to relieve everything and you don't need to go to the root of everything to start shifting and really see that sustained change. Now, if what you heard in this video sounds familiar, if you recognize yourself in the decisions, the patterns, the cost, the most important step, the most important next step is not strategy. It's understanding which stress state you're actually operating from right now. And I created the stress state assessment for exactly this moment. It is completely free. It takes about 5 minutes and it tells you whether you are in overdrive diva, faded sparkle, or grounded glow up, and what each one means for how you're showing up in your business and what you can do about it right now. The link is in the description. Take it before you do anything else today and come back to tell me your result. And if this resonates, drop a comment, even if it's just a yes, if you recognize yourself in any of this. The next video in the series is going to go one layer deeper into the specific behaviors that look like your best business instincts, but are actually your nervous system running familiar survival programs. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next video.